Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of San Miguel de Allende, Mexico. Is that too loud? I am Alicia Price, your service leader for this Sunday, and we thank you and welcome you for joining our spiritual community this morning. Ours is a liberal religion with a long history, characterized by a free and responsible search for truth and meaning in spiritual matters, and in works by a strong commitment to social justice. This fellowship is a place where you can bring your whole self, whatever your country or religious background, agnostic or atheist, whether you are happy or sad, whatever your sexuality or gender orientation, all are welcome here. As you may already know, this morning's service was shaped by the Love Team, which consists of Phyllis, Culp, Michael Hertz, Ron Lenox, Jurgen, Ahlers, and myself. I'm particularly happy today to be introducing the Reverend Jurgen Ahlers as this morning's speaker. Jurgen was born and raised in Germany. He graduated from Syracuse University and Princeton Theological Seminary. Much of his career as a Presbyterian minister was serving on the faculties of Hamburg University, Florida State University, and Auburn University. In the 1980s, he transitioned from higher education to the world of corporate business. He then served as director of professional development for all the Ritz-Carlton hotels worldwide for 4 years, after which he formed his own consulting business, specializing in corporate dynamics to several multinational companies, including Coca-Cola, BMW of North America, and Turner Broadcasting. He has 2 sons and 7 grandchildren. Jurgen has been living in San Miguel for just over 3 years and currently serves on our UUF board. We have a few announcements today. The Hotel Aldea has new management and new policies about parking. While attending our service, the parking is free. But if you wish to leave the premises and have lunch somewhere else, please be courteous and check in at the front desk to pay for parking. Thank you for your understanding. And now Margot Johnson has a message from our ministry task force.
Good morning. I'm Donna Shubrooks with just a quick COVID update.
I'm Margot Johnson.
For those of us who have not yet received a COVID vaccine booster
of professional ministry for our fellowship. And I have terrific news. We are so excited because we had surveys, as you all may know, and we ended up with 172 surveys completed. And each one took yes, thank you. It's wonderful, which is about a 68% completion rate, and we are delighted that you all participated, and thank you. Highlights of the results will be distributed by Dan, our board chair, sometime in the next few days. I'm not sure when, and he is still looking at those. The task force will study the results and look at the different ways to look at those results, and we will make a presentation to the board by February 1st. And then the board will look at that, and final decision about our future will be made by the fellowship at the March annual meeting. So, thank you again. We are so delighted that you agreed to participate and that most of you did. Thank you.
Thank you, Margot. Also, please, a few more announcements. Please remember to make a reservation with Diana Amaya if you wish to attend next week's service in person. You can sign up today when leaving. I believe there's a list outside, or email her at info@uufsma@gmail.com. We invite you to look in today's order of service for announcements of activities and membership information, and also to go to our website, uufsma.org, for full information about our fellowship. If you are joining us by Zoom today, please just stay connected after the postlude music ends to reflect on today's message and visit with today's speakers. If you are attending here in person, please exit quickly and quietly and enjoy visiting outside after the service ends. And now we have a few words from Donna Shubrooks regarding our COVID task force, and then another video from Kate Greenaway.
Good morning. I'm Donna Shubrooks with just a quick COVID update. For those of us who have not yet received a COVID vaccine booster, please register for the AstraZeneca vaccine expected in San Miguel in January. There will be short notice as before, so watch your emails from the UU. Booster registration information will be posted today in the chat box. Look for that. Attendance at the Aldea for Sunday services now requires proof of full vaccination, but you only need to show that one time and then we will keep records. Also, remember that especially during this busy holiday season, air travel is very, very, very busy. And if you are flying anywhere, you have been exposed to COVID. Please limit group contact for 3 or 4 days after arrival at your destination, or if you're symptomatic. Be tested on day 3 for reassurance to your family and friends. This pandemic is far from over. Please remain vigilant for everyone's protection. It's the UU thing to do. And now a message from Kate Greenaway.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kate Greenaway, and I want to grab your attention for a sec to do a quick pep talk about compliance with mask wearing. You all know that Omicron is upon us and that even those of us that are fully vaccinated are still at risk. And in fact, we ourselves can become that asymptomatic super spreader, right? So social responsibility is more important now than ever, and it begins at home. We have an opportunity to be the front runners, to be the role models for the language that everyone needs to know in our new normal. So how do we get people to wear their masks? First of all, don't be shy. Just be your good-humored, patient self. You might have to do what I do sometimes, which is like just take a breath and strive for compassion in our relationships. The best starting point, and almost always the most effective, is to simply indicate with a hand gesture, just something like this or like this. That is usually all most people need. 95% of the time, you're in. You can do verbally, don't forget your mask, and masks, everybody, please. Just like you would do if you got behind the driver's in the driver's seat, and you say, buckle up, everybody. It's the same deal, short and sweet. If you can't catch their eye, you might be able to catch the eye of somebody who's with them. It's perfectly okay to delegate this responsibility. We are all in this. Just keep it friendly and light. Smile with your eyes. Be sympathetic. Nobody loves to wear their mask. Give them a friendly nudge or a wink, a thumbs up. Now, especially at UU. Most of us are more likely to forget to wear our masks than to be actively refusing. So our fellowship should be a good place to practice this, not only during services, but during all of our social gatherings as well, right? And while we're at the Aldea, our ushers are trying to keep us all masked and feeling safe. But it's a good idea to do what we can to work with each other, to help them out. They would appreciate it a lot if we all nudge each other. They didn't get into this to be a policeman, right? And of course, there will be people who grumble. Me, I just simply shrug and smile and say, this is our new normal. But what do you do with people who actually refuse? Your first instinct might be to just give up, crawl under a rock, right? Me, I'm more like full offensive assault mode. But if I gather myself a bit, I know that I just need to do my best to persist, to be firm and unapologetic. You're not acting in your own self-interest. You're providing a service to the people around you. And we all appreciate it. It's potentially a life-saving service. So you're protecting all of us. And we thank you for that. I hope that this kind of bolsters those of you who have felt a bit shy about this. And let me say in one final breath, happy holidays, everybody, and masks up.
Our opening words today are from Dr. W. Hertz Wilson. This is the beginning of a new day. We have been given this day to use as we will. We can waste it or use it for good. But what we do today is important because we are exchanging a day of our lives for it. When tomorrow comes, this day will be gone forever, leaving in its place something we have traded for it. Let it be gain and not loss. Let it be good and not evil. Let it be success, not failure, in order that we shall not regret the price we have paid for it. And now we will light the chalice, an important symbol of our light in our UU tradition. Our Community Knows No Boundaries by Nancy Reed McKee. Our community knows no boundaries. We are not confined by the physical limits of walls, or for that matter, of what often binds us, restricts us, holds us back. We are freer than we know when we release ourselves and each other from expectations of what is needed for true community. We are here together in space and on Zoom. We see one another, we hear one another, we love one another. And we light this chalice, a beacon of this community, holding us all together, here and now. Let us now join our voices together to pledge and affirm our fellowship's living covenant. We will say it first in English, led by myself, and then in Spanish, led by Donna Amaya. We respect the interdependent web of life and work for a just and peaceful world. We encourage the search for truth and meaning, strive for compassion in our lives, and seek values that will benefit our lives and the lives of others. This is our covenant. Diana.
Respetamos todos los estilos de vida dentro de su red interdependiente y trabajamos por un mundo justo y pacífico. Alentamos la búsqueda de la verdad y la comprensión total. Nos esforzamos por mantener compasión en nuestras relaciones y buscamos valores que beneficien nuestras vidas y las vidas de los demás. Este es nuestro convenio.
And now our minister, Tom Rosiello, will express our joys and concerns.
Good morning. We now enter in a very special part of our service, a time when members of our community share significant joys, sorrows, and concerns. It's written in the Talmud that when we share a joy, the pleasure is doubled, and when we share a concern or sorrow, the pain is cut in half. I believe that's especially true when we do so in beloved community, where we reach out and care for each other. If you have a joy, sorrow, or concern you'd like shared in an upcoming service, please email it to me. If you have one, if you're in our Zoom congregation and you have one you'd like to have shared this morning, please put it into the chat now and we will do that. Holidays are a joyful time for many, but also difficult times of loneliness and emotional struggles for others. This candle, which Jurgen will now light, is for all who are finding this holiday season difficult. And it's also a candle for all of us to encourage us to draw our circle a little wider this season and reach out to those who are alone, who are in need, who are struggling in whatever way we can. We bring them the light. Next joy is from you, Jurgen. Jurgen lights this candle of joy and solidarity, saying, about a week ago, the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to 2 exemplary investigative journalists, representing journalists around the globe who risk life and limb to report on gross injustices and the right to freedom of expression, preconditions for democracy and lasting peace. The Nobel Prize recipients were Maria Ressa of the Philippines and Dmitry Muratov of Russia. Stan Allen reminded us that this week is the International Day of the Migrant, and this week we have concerns that relate to that right here in San Miguel. Stan also wants to express the joy of the people who help. Many of you wrote about this, and Diana Kejian lights this candle of concern for the serious migrant crisis right here in San Miguel and passes on this message from Joey Merrifield. There's been a huge uptick in the number of migrants arriving at the INM office in San Miguel, so much so that the director has reached out to Camiones Juntos and other groups for help. A small group of volunteers has formed an online committee, and together with help from Camiones Juntos and financial aid from the Latin American Relief Fund, has been reaching out and feeding and finding shelter for them in SMA, because Abba House in Celaya is inundated with migrants and refugees right now. Many are Haitian who have received or are waiting for their humanitarian visas to remain in Mexico. They have little money, no food, and need warm clothes. There are many children in the group, including infants and toddlers. They're temporarily being housed at the Sindicato on Recreo 4, thanks to the assistance of several community members, and we're asking people who are able to bring prepared food, warm clothing, blankets, diapers, toilet paper, feminine hygiene products, soap, shampoo, and other necessities to the Sindicato. And if you're unable to do that, you can donate money at the Camiones Juntos website, which is just csjma.org. So many of you this week, this was our highest week for Joys and Concerns, over 20 came in. And I've combined them together, so if you don't hear your name, you'll still hear your joy or concern, I think. So many of you asked to light a candle today in memory of Carol Turner. Carol Turner was a member of this fellowship. She passed away this week after a massive stroke, which happened as she was being treated for COVID in the hospital. She was just shy of her 80th birthday. Beverly Van Zant describes her as a true friend. And from the number of emails I've received asking us to remember Carol this morning, it's clear she was that to many, especially those like Beverly with whom she shared travel and other adventures. Here's a few words from Cynthia Sterling that she shared about Carol's life. Carol had deep roots here at San Miguel. She'd been coming to this city with her mother since she was a teenager. Her mother was a fine artist and owned a house here. Carol and her husband Roy were both teachers. When summer vacation came, they took advantage of the free time to travel all over the world, visiting more than 80 countries. They had adopted a child, Travis, who died when he was in his 20s, and her husband Roy died in the same year. Carol sold her mother's house in town, bought a farm in La Huerta, about 12 miles outside of San Miguel, where she raised goats, rabbits, ducks, and chickens. She had a greenhouse and fruit trees and a large organic garden. She was a fascinating person with an interest in all forms of metaphysics. Carol was a wonderful cook, and her luncheons out in the country on the deck overlooking the garden and the duck pond were something all looked forward to. She brought joy to many. We're going to miss her terribly. Today we all hold Carol's memory in our hearts, and the candle we light reminds us that her light still shines among us. We remember also another member of our community who passed away. We received a note from David Ahlers this past week that his longtime partner that many of you knew, Cynthia Huntington, died at home with hospice care in November after a stroke she'd suffered sometime before. She was 86 years old and passed away in California, where she'd returned for health reasons several years ago. But many of you remember Cynthia regularly attending our service, always dressed elegantly, wearing a big hat and speaking with a British accent. She ran a B&B here in San Miguel for many years and built and renovated other properties here. Born in Yorkshire, England, she left home at the age of 16 to be a nanny in Copenhagen, became a registered nurse, spoke several languages, and went to work with those skills for Pan Am Airlines and flew the New York to Middle East route, where she met a Turkish professor, married, and had a son. When that didn't work, she returned to the U.S. and remarried. After a 30-year marriage, she was divorced, and she met David Ahlers, who many of you know, 35 years ago in California, at all places, at a singles gathering at a UU church there. And they happily spent their lives together since. So this candle is in memory of Cynthia and as an expression of our sympathy to David. Do we have any typed into chat? None this morning. So we light our final candle for all those joys, sorrows, and concerns for which we hold in our hearts, but which remain unspoken this morning. We do so with resolve to reach out and care for those whom we can help, and to face our own challenges honestly and diligently. I now invite you into a time of meditation guided by beautiful music. Each week at this time in the service, we speak about some way that the financial contributions you make to this fellowship are spent, particularly how they help others. Sometimes we highlight the expenses involved in sustaining this beloved community and presenting our wonderful Sunday services and other programs. Often, we share information about one of the many NGOs that your contributions to this fellowship help to support through our Social Action Grant Program. Of course, it's wonderful that we're helping those in the greater community in need, but at times there are also needs within our own community. As the saying goes, charity begins at home. So several years ago, our board authorized the creation of the Minister's Discretionary Fund. This fund is separate from our annual budget. None of your pledge money or contributions to the regular weekly collection go to it. It is entirely funded by the generosity of members and friends who make contributions specifically to that fund. And about once a year, usually at the time of holiday giving, we designate the Sunday offering to go specifically to that fund. Today's collection is exclusively for that purpose. But please note you can make a donation to the fund at any time by designating the MDF, Minister's Discretionary Fund, as recipient of an online donation or on the memo line of your check. Checks are made payable to the UUFSMA as always, just with that in the memo line. And the treasurer will see to it that the money goes to the correct fund, as will all cash, pesos, or dollars that are received this morning. The fund is starting to get low, so we need your help. Many of us are financially blessed, but some among us when significant extra expense arises, can face major challenges. Sometimes those challenges are a choice between food or rent or medicine. It can be the difference between seeing a doctor or not seeing a doctor. The Minister's Discretionary Fund, MDF, has helped provide food, medicine, paid for doctor's visits, even medical procedures. We've helped with rent and emergency travel, or provided short-term help when things like access to funds became unavailable because a wallet was stolen or lost. Occasionally, small amounts from the fund are used just to bring some joy, a little joy, when someone really needs a lift of spirit, maybe with a few flowers or plants or some special food. It's a way of saying, in more than just words, that your community, your fellowship is here for you when times are difficult in your life. Sometimes people in need contact me directly for help, but often other members in our community become aware of the need and contact me. And then I'll call the person or reach out to them and see if we can help. The gift is often combined with some pastoral care, and that care can give someone emotional lift when times are not well. All gifts are given confidentially. The Committee on Ministry works with me to sustain the fund and review the gifts made. There is never an expectation of repayment. It is an unconditional gift from this community. But you might find it interesting to know that occasionally, when circumstances change for the better, a recipient made a contribution back to the fund so that they could help someone else. This is a time of year when many of us make gifts to our favorite charities, and when some of us are out looking for that perfect gift for the someone who really doesn't need anything. This is an opportunity to give a gift to some member of this community in a time of need, someone you probably know but will likely not know their circumstances, and you will not know who receives it, and they will not know who gave it, other than it came from this community of generosity and caring. They will not be able to thank you personally, so I'll thank you on their behalf. You've done a lot of good in the last couple of years. You've made some real differences in the lives of members of this community who, for whatever reason, were at a point in their life where they needed just a little help. Right now, I need your help to continue to help others among us when they need it. So I invite you to be generous as the morning offering is taken up, and generous at any time of the year you can to the fund. The morning offering will be gratefully accepted and will be dedicated to the minister's discretionary fund. If you're online, you'll see a placard on how to donate as well.
If you would turn to responsive reading number 638, Michael Hertz, our team member of the Love Team, will speak the part that you all will speak, and I will lead it. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal.
And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and knowledge, and if I have faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing.
If I give away all my possessions, and I hand over my body to be burned, but do not have love, I gain nothing.
Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth.
It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. Prophecies will come to an end, tongues will cease, knowledge will come to an end. We know in part, we prophesy in part, but when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end.
When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child.
When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. Now we see in a mirror, in a riddle.
Then we will see face to face. Now I know in part, then I will know fully.
Now faith, hope, and love abide. These three, and the greatest of these is love.
World War I, also known as the Great War, began in 1914 after the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. Heir to the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, he was shot to death, along with his wife, Sophie, by the Serbian nationalist Gavrilo Princip on June 28, 1914. Their murder catapulted into a war across Europe that lasted until 1918. More than 16 million people, soldiers and civilians alike, were dead. This was not love. On July 28, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, and the tenuous peace between Europe's great powers quickly collapsed. Within a week, Russia, Belgium, France, Great Britain, and Serbia had lined up against Austria-Hungary and Germany, and World War I had begun. Each side thought that the war would be over by Christmas, but by November, it was clear that the war was not going to be over quickly. Benedict XV was elected Pope on September 6, 1914. He possessed the diplomatic experience that his conclave wanted. In November 1914, Benedict published the first of his 12 encyclicals. The greatest and wealthiest nations, he said, were, quote, well provided with most awful weapons modern military science has devised, and they strive to destroy one another with the refinements of horror. Nationalism, racism, and class conflict, Benedict condemned as characteristics of the age. These words made me think of Bernie Sanders and other critics of today's world and the continuation of man's inhumanity to man. On December 7, 1914, Benedict pleaded with the belligerent powers to hold a Christmas truce, asking that the guns may fall silent, at least upon the night the angels sang, to allow for negotiations for an honorable peace. The Pope's plea was officially ignored, but there were informal, haphazard, and unauthorized truces along parts of the Western Front. Disobeying what their officers wanted, the ordinary soldiers were responsible for these truces. 100,000 soldiers, British, German, and French, participated across the Western Front. Not everywhere. There was still fighting on Christmas in some parts of the Western Front. But as German Lieutenant Kurt Zesmisch recalled, quote, how marvelously wonderful, how strange it was. The English officers felt the same way about it. The Christmas, the celebration of love, managed to bring mortal enemies together as friends for a time. For me, the question is why these soldiers, who could be shot as traitors for disobedience, showed such courage and in such large numbers. If we want Christmas in 2021 become a time of worldly love, these soldiers are the examples for us to follow 107 years after they showed what can be done.
Oakley. Night.
Ein Britter kommt! Ein Britter kommt!
Jim?
Jim! No, don't do it! Halt! Er ist nicht bewaffnet! Nein, Otto!
My name is Jim.
Mein Name ist Otto.
Pleased to meet you, Otto.
Freut mich.
Rose, she's called.
Das ist schön. Das ist schön. Danke.
Happy Christmas.
Frohe Weihnachten.
We're so happy this morning to have our dear friend Michael Moore, partner of Paula Peace, be with us with his, I don't know, is it called a tubet, maybe? Little tuba, who is going to lead us in our next song, the one that we just witnessed, Silent Night, Holy Night, first singing, playing solo, and then if you wouldn't mind, then at the end of that first solo, if you would stand, if you're able, and sing hymn number 251, and feel free to sing it in whatever respective language you might remember it in. Silent Night, Holy Night.
I'm so overwhelmed from that last video, I hope I can play it.
Thank you, Michael and Paula. How does it feel when you sing this song, this lullaby to the baby they called the Christ child? You may not believe in the Christ child, but it's possible, just possible, that singing this tune causes you to remember. Perhaps when you were a child, feeling the warmth of Christmas when you were surrounded by loved ones at home in the depth of winter. Well, I think that that's exactly what the young soldiers fighting in their deadly trenches on this particularly Christmas Eve of 1914 must have felt, fighting a senseless war, the magnitude of which the world had never seen before. It's not hard for us to imagine how the young soldiers, upon hearing the plaintive soft voices of the other side, spontaneously begin to sing this all too familiar song. How compelling this moment of time must have felt when 2 and then 3 of the opposing warring sides began chiming in, singing in their respective languages. What a stupendous moment shortly after the song's conclusion, as a young soldier ever so cautiously emerges from his mud-frozen trench, his hands up, somehow trusting in his heart that the enemy sees him, identifies with him. And the young soldier on the other side, seeing this act of brazen courage, shouts, "Don't shoot!" He's got his hands up. And the others, seeing this in this pregnant moment, I believe for them the time simply stood still. In that moment, soldiers on opposing sides felt an indescribable sense of exhilaration, even camaraderie. And as historical fact has it, as Michael shared with us earlier, soldiers emerged along a broad swath of these terribly frozen trenches, abandoning their weapons and sharing, celebrating a most precious, spontaneous, unofficial truce. They looked into each other's eyes, extending hands, exchanging modest gifts, even kicking a ball around as they did when they were boys. We who planned this service for this morning believe that this crisis-prone moment over 100 years ago was a moment of love. But that particular kind of love called empathic love. Love which in that implausible moment fundamentally shifted their assumption of mortal enemy. So on this Sunday, before Christmas, I want to share with you the two unique concepts of time that we've received from the ancient Greeks. The first being chronos, we're all familiar with. It's the measurement of time, of days, weeks, months, years. And the second, perhaps not so familiar to us, the measurement of time, or the concept of time, kairos, K-A-I-R-O-S, which means in the fullness of time, a pregnant, opportune moment, or even a crisis-opportune moment in time. Those of you who might be familiar with the writings of Nikos Kazantzakis, the author of Zorba the Greek, or The Last Temptation of Christ, by the way, for which he got excommunicated by the Greek Orthodox Church because they felt his profound theological views were not acceptable to the people of the times. Those of you who might be familiar with the writings of Kazantzakis and Zorba, I want to share with you a quick insight into Zorba's kairos. At one point he exclaims, "I live in the full catastrophe of life." In other words, he lived his life writ large, without calculating, never missing a moment to drink the earthly cup to its lees. You couldn't help but be drawn into the orbit of his love, his zest for life. Not unlike Will Rogers, whose famous saying, "I never met a man whom I didn't like." I believe the Christmas Truce of 1914 was such a kairos moment that in an instant transformed everything. We don't know what was flashing through the minds of the young soldiers, risking everything as they emerged from their respective frozen trenches, perhaps persuaded, surely we can do better than slaughter one another. So I ask, what does all this have to do with our observance of Christmas just a few days from today? Nine 2021. What does it have to do with love? What does kairos have to do with a swarm of crises hurtling toward us like a tsunami? The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists' Doomsday Clock was recently set at 100 seconds before midnight, the closest it's been since 1947, when the scientists first unveiled this clock. When I think of it, I believe that our time today, with its compounded crises, may actually be more perilous than the two wars, the two world wars combined? Could it be that the doomsday clock is where Chronos and Kairos intersect, where the measure of time is unquestionably precarious, but also where opportunity for a seismic shift, for a healthy, thriving, and human relations could become imminent? When I look back in our not too distant history, we can identify moments of time when Chronos and Kairos intersected and the history was profoundly changed. I'm reminded of the moment when Gandhi, shortly before his assassination, as Muslim and Hindu leaders, both of them struggling for freedom from British oppression, seemed to be locking horns with one another as to which religion is more righteous. And Gandhi interjected these now famous words, "I am a Muslim. I am a Hindu. I am a Christian. And I am a Jew. And so are you." This was, at last, in that moment, at least a massively transformative moment for leaders of India coming together. With these words, Gandhi conveyed that idle squabbling was getting them nowheres, that a radical breakthrough in human community was needed. It's empathy. And surely this Kairos moment, when Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address and FDR announced the New Deal, giving new hope and energy to a sullen, broken country, these also were Kairos moments that shaped history. Empathic love, my friends, is a powerful, life-transformative force that our world today is yearning for. According to Christian tradition, more than a little more than 2 million years ago, in an area today known as Palestine and Israel, an implausible intersection of Chronos and Kairos occurred when God, who up until then had been projected into the sky, injected him, her, itself into the life, into the fragile little baby named Yeshua, born of all places in a cow stall, amid the stench of dung, to a sacred young girl named Mary. Theologically speaking, this occurrence is referred to as God incarnate, when God in factual deed became human just like you and me. Interestingly, this extraordinary moment of the longed-for Messiah was prophesied, was foretold by Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah, when he said, "Then the wolf shall live with the sheep, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf and the young lion shall grow up together, and a young child shall lead them." My friends, from a faith perspective, this intersection of Chronos and Kairos was a moment of inexplicable empathic love. God totally identifies with, no, God becomes a fragile, agile baby. The divine, the sacred spark igniting every human soul with the capacity to move mountains. Our calculative, logical mind has difficulty grasping the immensity of this, albeit possible, metaphorical breakthrough. But from the moment that historical measurement of time, Chronos, became BC and AD, before Christ, or today before the Common Era, and AD, Anno Domini. On the other hand, it appears that Kairos, this dynamic, this transformative force that seems to have faded from human consciousness. And by and large, what we have left is a Christmas revelry bearing little relevance to the truly impactful, magnificent origin. I'm reminded of the stirring poem by Lawrence Ferlinghetti, PhD, by the way. Yes, he got his doctorate in Sorbonne. The poem is called Christ Climbed Down from His Bare Tree this year, written in his anthology, The Coney Island of the Mind. Ferlinghetti, as one of the key drivers of the Beat generation, all too well recognized what became of the Christmas event in the mid-1950s, when the emergence of plastic tinsel trees and gaudy, garish, flickering lights, commercial opportunism, and so forth and so on. He ended this epic poem with these sombering words. Christ climbed down from his bare tree this year and softly stole away into some anonymous Mary's womb again, where in the darkest night of everybody's darkest soul, he awaits again. An unimaginable and impossibly immaculate reconception, the very craziest of second comings. Young people across the world today, and particularly young evangelicals, can relate to Ferlinghetti's analogy. The tree he refers to is not a sign of birth, but of death in life, of death, since it is rootless, masquerading as life. Christ climbed down from the cross, the tree bare and dead, in protest against the consumeristic opportunism of our time, and how this has brought us, how this is bringing us to the brink of global cataclysm. Young people across the world can identify with the symbolicness of the doomsday clock, with the persistent injustices the modern world has wreaked upon an ailing planet. Young people across the world have no difficulty identifying with the disenfranchised, knowing full well that if we do not act today, if we don't birth a new, a more just, more healthy, more creative, and more unified world, then there's really no future to look forward to. Empathy, you see, is a superpower. Empathy is a force, an energy that can transform a grossly divided and corrupt world. Empathy. Now, just to be clear, empathic love is not the same as falling in love. It doesn't take much to fall in love. Sure, it does evoke some elements of creativity and imagination, even some element, a certain willingness to sacrifice. But empathic love is more akin to parental love. It's a mature, disciplined kind of love. As we stated in our reading this morning, it is patient, kind, not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own, but it does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but it rejoices in the truth. Certainly, I can't say that empathic love is effortless. On the contrary, it demands great effort. It demands that listening becomes an art form. It demands bending, leaning into those who are diametrically opposed to our way of thinking. It means leaning into the fear, the fragility behind the mask of arrogance and offensiveness. Empathic love identifies with our common, fragile, yet agile humanness. My friends, we are indeed at an unprecedented intersection of kairos and chronos. Potentially a moment of irreversible disaster on a scale truly bewildering, or a moment of unimaginable and impossibly immaculate reconception, the very craziest of second comings. Actually, from my point of view, the moment in time that we are witnessing today is filled with promise. I just want to share with you that we have an abundance of innovation the world has never seen unfold before. Just alone, this book, Draw Down, is filled. It's a big book, I will admit. A lot of things in it. It's filled with innovations of how we can draw down the poisonous carbon from the atmosphere and bring it back down into a productive earth. Do you like the sweater I'm wearing? Huh? It's made from this. My sons gave it to me on Christmas. Oh, more than 30 years ago. They were quite young at the time, but they were excited about what you can do with recycling plastic. That's what it is. There are untold ways in which we can turn things around in the time that we've been given. And the young are ready for the realization of a radical new age. But they need to know that they have our backs. When they take their empathic love for the planet and all living things to the streets, to the halls of government, and to international economic forums shouting, "Our house is on fire. Help us put it out." So let this Christmas time, this unique moment in time, be a time of reflection, renewal, and yet also celebration. As we ask empathically, what does Christmas really mean in our time? So in closing, here are a few words, a few thoughts you might want to carry with you. Christmas is a child of Palestinian Jewish parents desperately fleeing a politically ordered genocide. Christmas is a dark-skinned refugee born amid the smell of damp straw and animal dung because no human-worthy welcome could be found. Christmas is a compassionate caregiver, feeding and clothing and healing whoever crosses her path. Christmas is a liberal activist fighting for the poor, condemning violence, shunning material wealth, and calling on the world to live sacrificially for the common good. It is a weary father of four taking refuge from ICE in a suburban church building. Christmas is an exhausted family sprinting through barren borderlands under the cover of darkness. It is the transgender teenager trying to feel at home within their own body while being terrorized by lawmakers and preachers from without. Christmas is the homeless veteran starving to death on the corners of opulent megachurches. It is the grievously ill toddler whose parents in the campo have exhausted their meager resources trying to keep him breathing. Christmas is the young black man terrified during a traffic stop because he has seen this viral video cam 100 times before. Those of us who seek to emulate the historical Jesus, to celebrate his miraculous birth and safeguard humanity's future, must take a stand. Every one of our hallowed principles, which we recite weekly in our covenant, comes to mind. We need to fight for the sick child, the migrant family, the transgender teenager, the homeless veteran, the young black man, because when we do so, we keep alive the heartbeat of the Middle Eastern child born under duress in the place where sheep and cows were kept. The one who turned the world upside down in the name of compassion, that knew no limits and love that had no walls. May it be so. In closing, well, not quite in closing, let us stand and sing a familiar hymn, Christmas song, "It Came Upon a Midnight Clear." And let us stand if you're able.
Please be seated. You just sung the words of a Unitarian writer, and another one of the roughly same period, Charles Dickens, wrote A Christmas Carol, as you know, and it said at the end of that story, the reformed Scrooge was a man who knew how to keep Christmas well. The Reverend Henry Van Dyke expanded on what that might mean when he wrote, "It's good to observe Christmas Day, the mere making of times and seasons when people agree to stop work and make merry is a wise and wholesome custom. It helps one to feel the supremacy of the common life over the individual life. It reminds one to set his own little watch now and then by the great clock of humanity, which runs on sun time. But there's a better thing than the observance of Christmas Day, and that is keeping Christmas. Are you willing to forget what you've done for other people and to remember what others have done for you? To ignore what the world owes you and to think what you owe the world? To put your rights in the background and your duties in the middle distance, and your chance to do a little more than your duty in the foreground? To see that your fellow human beings are just as real as you are, and to try to look behind their faces to their hearts, hungry for joy? To own that probably the only good reason for your existence is not what you're going to get out of life, but what you're going to give to life? To close your book of complaints against the management of the universe and look around for a place where you can sow a few seeds of happiness? Are you willing to do these things even for a day? Then you can keep Christmas. Are you willing to stoop down and consider the needs and the desires of little children? To remember the weakness and loneliness of people who are growing old? To stop asking how much your friends love you and ask yourself whether you love them enough? To bear in mind things that other people have to bear in their hearts? To try to understand what those who live in the same house with you really want without waiting for them to tell you? To trim your lamp so that you'll give more light and less smoke, and carry it in front of you so that your shadow will fall behind you? To make a grave of your ugly thoughts and a garden of your kindly feelings with a wide open gate? Are you willing to do these things, even for a day? Then you can keep Christmas. Are you willing to believe that love is the strongest thing in the world, stronger than hate, stronger than evil, stronger than death, and that the blessed life which began in Bethlehem 2,000 years ago is the image and brightness of the eternal love? Then you can keep Christmas. And if you keep it for a day, why not always? It's our custom to extinguish our chalice flame at the end of our service and metaphorically carry our light with us. But today we're going to actually pass that light to those of you who have candles and spread the light, share the light, rather than extinguish the light first. As we do, we'll enjoy a familiar song on video. Feel free to listen or join in as you receive the light.
There comes a time when we heed a certain call, when the world must come together as one. There are people dying. Oh, when it's time to lend a hand to life, the greatest gift of all.